legends. I hope you're all fantastic. We're going to check out some new features in firmware 31.03 for the Axe-FX3. First Axe-FX video for 2026. This update came out over the holiday season and it's sounding fantastic. Let's dive straight in. There are some improvements to the pitch block, the volume block, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's been added in here that I haven't taken a look at from previous firmware. So let's start out with the pitch block, in particular, the virtual capo, because I thought this was really good before, but now it really is outstanding. Not only is it a lot more stable, but the latency on here is pretty incredible. I did a very quick and dirty measurement and I got a sub 9 millisecond latency for the virtual capo, which is pretty incredible. That's considerably better than a lot of standalone pedal solutions that do this. So if you're unfamiliar with the virtual capo, it is going to polyphonically retune your guitar by a number of steps up or down. So for example, I've currently got my Chilier Renegade in standard tuning. It's got a floating Floyd Rose style bridge. So say taking it down a half step or a whole step requires me to set up the whole guitar. Or I could use the virtual capo. I could take the shift to -2. I'm going to leave the detector source on here as input 1, and then I'm going to set the pitch tracking mode to chords so that I can play some chords on here. Everything else is at the stock settings. Let's hear it. It tracks and feels really, really good on here. In particular, having two pitch blocks on the Axe-FX3 means that I can run some big, greasy dual D tune at the end of the chain. But if you're on an FM3 or an FM9, I'm sure there'll be an update trickling down that lets you use this as well. Very, very nice on there. Just keep in mind, if you're tuning your guitar down, of course it's going to sound darker. You're literally stretching those waveforms out on there. So one trick I like to do is just grab a parametric EQ. I've got it saved in my blocks library. I've just called it Virtual Capo EQ Correction, and essentially just use a low shelf for 2 to 3 dB of cut, and then a high shelf for 2 to 3 dB. Well, I've got 4 dB on there. You know, do whatever you want on there just to give it a little bit of a high-end boost. So cut a little bit of low subtly, boost a little bit of high end on there. Again, if I go, let's go all the way down 4 semitones on here and have a listen to what that does. Also worth remembering, if you're using this as a solution for a couple of songs, say in a live context, to think about what tuning the majority of your set list is in. If you're in the situation where you need a couple of songs, say in E flat, I think the virtual capo is going to work great on there. But if you can get away with retuning your guitar, say a half step or a whole step lower, and then just using the virtual capo to go back up every now and then, that can work even better. And I actually use this function a lot. Just virtual capo up one semitone on here with my drop C guitars. So I've got a Sir Modern in drop C at the moment. Some of the older ragdoll material that we play was in drop C sharp. So if I want to practice those songs and play along to the recordings, I'll just grab my drop C guitar and chuck this virtual capo on there. Let's have a listen to that. Very tasty stuff indeed. It's such a fantastic utility tool to have in here. I will just say though, if you were somebody who had half of your set list that you have to play in standard tuning and the other half down a half step, you are so much better off taking two guitars to the gig. You're always going to be compromising with a solution like this. There's always a trade-off between accuracy and performance in terms of latency, in terms of tracking on there. And if your gig depends on you sounding like $1 million in those different tunings on there, then I feel like it's part of the professional toolkit to actually just take an extra instrument along. But you know, if you have to do 3 or 4 songs that are dropped down or tuned up, the virtual capo is great. For me, tuning up my drop C guitars so I can play some of the band's old songs at home, or taking my Floyd Rose or Floating Bridge equipped guitars and tuning them down so I can play along to some tunes is just a great utility to have. Let's move on though, because the pitch block has some other tasty improvements, namely in the arpeggiator. I'm going to bring up something from my blocks library in here because you've probably heard my intro music before. That's a little snippet of a ragdoll song called Playing God. And when we tracked that song, I used an algorithm in the Eventide H9 called Arpeggiator to do these arpeggios in the little bridge and for the ending. And I've used the arpeggiator to recreate this. Now, one thing that has changed in the arpeggiator, if you've never used it before, what used to happen before was you would trigger the arpeggiator, and then if you stopped and started again, it would resume from the place in the arpeggio that you had stopped at. So say it's a 4-step arpeggio and you stop after 3 and you start again, rather than re-triggering from the start, which something like a synthesizer arpeggiator would normally do, it was just going from the next step. I like here that now the new behavior follows that old school synth behavior. So this is super, super fun. Let's have a listen to this. I've got this in C minor, and the sequence is going up an octave, and then up a 5th, and then back to the root note, and then back up a 5th. So it's just kind of cycling up and down a power chord. Basically, it's kind of doing this pattern. But I can do it with one finger, and it sounds really cool. It's got this kind of synthy quality to it. sound pretty wacky on there by increasing that glide time. I generally like that around 1 to 5 milliseconds or something around there. You can also set the trigger threshold on here, which is cool. So if you set it up so that when you play softly, the arpeggiator doesn't fire off, and then when you play really hard, it does. I think somewhere around here with this guitar generally works pretty well. Get really crazy by combining this with some awesome stereo effects. So I've got a compressor going into a synth block that's currently bypass on here. I've got 2 detuned saw waves that are slightly panned, and then an octave lower square wave on here, basically set up for a Taurus style sound on there. That's going into that pitch block arpeggiator setting from before. Then we've got a digital stereo phaser. We've got a dual delay into a stereo pair of amps and a cab over here. Then I've got a quad parallel delay, some reverb, and some dual detune at the end of the chain. Let's just have a listen to what happens when I add all of that fun stuff on there. Auto-Swell type in the volume block has also been updated and improved. There is a new control in here called Hysteresis. We'll talk about that one in just a little bit. I'm going to leave it at the stock setting of 6 dB for now, but I've just adjusted the threshold to suit how I'm picking on this guitar, and I've turned the attack up. I generally find somewhere between 150 and 250 milliseconds is a good starting point for nice natural sounding volume swells. I'm using the Texas Star Clean amp model based on the Boogie Lone Star, a free IR that I made. You can grab this one off Exchange based on a Boogie cab with some EV12Ls in there, really nice for clean sounds. Then a dual delay and the Stratocumulus reverb. Let's have a listen to what this sounds like. Very nice stuff indeed. If I was playing chords and one of those swelling in, I would turn the threshold up just because I'm pummeling more energy into the input over there. You can also play around with the volume taper. This S taper is actually quite nice. And then the hysteresis control on there. I need to be careful with the language that I use here, but as a non-technical definition, I would consider it like a sustained control when doing volume swells. It's like how long I can get away with holding a note, and that's because it is looking at the average value that is being played into that volume block over time. You can check the release notes for the proper technical definition, or you can just use your ears and set it to where it sounds good. So the S taper and the threshold a bit higher, I think works really nice for chords. That is all for today's video. If you haven't tried the latest firmware, check it out. There's so many goodies in there to play around. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, there's various ways to support what I'm doing. You can also grab my free IR or check out some of the music that I make with my band Ragdoll. Go and grab your guitars and make some glorious guitar noises, and I will see you all on the next one.